Kronos Protocol. The losing war. By the 40th year of the Krivan War, humanity had run out of miracles. The Krivan Dominion had swallowed 6 border systems in a single decade, their war hives multiplying faster than human shipyards could counter. Earth's fleets fought with a kind of grim, mathematical despair, every battle 1 border week, maybe 2, before the next hive swarm arrived larger than the last. Admiral Renata Okafor, commander of the Sol Defense Fleet, had stopped counting the ships she'd lost. She'd started counting the ones she had left. 17 capital ships, she said, staring at the tactical display aboard the Meridian. 17, against an enemy that builds 17 more every month. Her intelligence officer, Commander Desh Patel, didn't look up from his console. Command wants an answer by tomorrow. Full retreat to the inner systems, or hold the line at Kepler Station. Neither will save us, Okafor said. We need something they've never seen. That something had a name whispered only in the highest clearance levels. Project Hourglass. 2. The Secret Beneath Series. 3 years earlier, a joint team of physicists and military engineers had been buried, literally, inside a hollowed asteroid in the Ceres field, working on a theory so dangerous that only 11 people alive knew its full scope. Dr. Wen Liu had spent her career studying closed time-like curves, the strange loopholes in general relativity that allowed, in principle, for localized pockets of spacetime to be folded back on themselves. For decades it had been a mathematical curiosity, useless without power sources humanity didn't have. The war changed that. Desperation is a brilliant engineer. We can't send anything back more than 4 minutes, Liu explained to the assembled generals, months before Okafor's fleet reached its breaking point. And we can't send matter. Only a field, a bubble of altered causality, about 2 kilometers wide. But inside that bubble, for those 4 minutes, we control the flow of time itself. General Marcus Webb, the project's military overseer, frowned. Control it how? Slow it. Freeze it. Or, Liu hesitated. Reverse it. Locally. Temporarily. Enough to undo 4 minutes of damage to a fleet. Enough to give our ships a second chance at 4 minutes that already happened. It sounded like science fiction. It sounded like a miracle. It was, in truth, closer to a curse, because nobody in that room understood yet what 4 minutes of rewritten history would cost. The weapon was built in secret, disguised in supply manifests as mining equipment, hidden behind shell companies and dead-end research grants. They called the device the Hourglass Core, and they built exactly one. 3. Kepler Station. Okafor made her decision at 0300 hours. They would hold the line at Kepler Station, and they would gamble everything on Hourglass. The Krivan swarm arrived 6 hours later, 11,000 war hive vessels, an ocean of chitin and plasma cannon, blotting out the stars behind them. Human sensors simply stopped being able to count individual targets past a certain density. The enemy became a single, vast organism of steel and hunger. The human fleet, 17 capital ships and their escorts, formed up around Kepler Station like a fist closing around something small and precious. Deploy the core, Okafor ordered. Deep in the Meridian S modified cargo hold, Dr. Liu and her team activated the Hourglass Core for the first time in a live engagement. A sphere of dark, rippling energy unfolded from the ship, expanding outward until it enclosed the entire battle group in a shimmering, barely visible bubble 2 kilometers across. The battle began in the ordinary way. Krivan fighters tore into the human formation. The Andromeda's Sorrow, one of Earth's newest dreadnoughts, took a direct hit to its reactor core and began to break apart, its crew of 4,000 souls scattered into vacuum in less than 90 seconds. Okafor watched the ship die. Then she gave the second order. Rewind. Inside the bubble, time folded backward. The Andromeda's Sorrow reassembled itself in an eye blink, debris flowing back together, fire sucked back into the reactor, for 1,000 people who had been screaming and dying a heartbeat ago suddenly finding themselves alive again, disoriented, with no memory of having died at all. Outside the bubble's edge, the rest of the universe hadn't moved. The Krivan fleet was exactly where it had been 4 minutes before, weapons charging for the same opening salvo. But this time, humanity knew what was coming. Okafor repositioned her ships with knowledge no enemy could anticipate. The Andromeda's Sorrow moved out of the lethal firing line seconds before the shot that would have killed it. Human gunners, who moments ago, in a timeline that technically no longer existed, had watched their targeting solutions fail, now fired with impossible precision, because they remembered exactly where the enemy would be. It wasn't magic. It was rehearsal, A battle fought once in secret and then fought again for real, with the script already memorized. The Krivan vanguard, 1,200 ships strong, was annihilated in the second version of those 4 minutes. Word spread through the human fleet like electricity. We can't lose. We already know how we win. 4. The cost nobody mentioned. But Dr. Liu was not celebrating. In the cargo hold, sensors on the Hourglass core were screaming warnings that only she and her closest engineer, a quiet young man named Tomasz Baran, understood. The bubble isn't closing cleanly, Tomasz said, sweat on his forehead despite the cold recycled air. Every rewind leaves a residue. A fracture. How bad? Bad enough that if we use it again today, we might not get a clean 4 minutes back. We might get echoes, overlaps, loops that don't fully resolve. Liu understood what he meant, and it terrified her more than the Krivan fleet did. They were not simply rewinding time. They were tearing tiny scars into the fabric of causality, scars that didn't heal, scars that accumulated. She reported this to Okafor immediately. How many more users do we have? Okafor asked, her voice flat with the exhaustion of a commander who has learned to compartmentalize horror in order to function. I don't know. 3, maybe 4, before the bubble becomes unstable in ways I can't predict. After that, Liu stopped. After that, what? After that, we might not be rewinding time. We might be creating branches. Splitting a version of this battle, this fleet, these people, off into a fork of reality we can't return from. If that happens, the crew that experiences the split won't remember the other version. They won't know they're not the real one anymore. There won't be a real one anymore. Okafor absorbed this in silence. Then she said the thing that would define the rest of the war. We use it only when the alternative is total defeat. Every other time, we fight like it's the only version of us that exists, because from now on, maybe it is. The turning point. The Krivan Dominion, unaware of the true nature of Hourglass, initially assumed human tactics had simply improved, that Earth had developed superior predictive algorithms or spies within Krivan command. Their strategists adjusted, sending larger, more overwhelming waves to overpower whatever new tactical edge humanity had found. It didn't matter. Every time the Krivan committed to an attack pattern, Hourglass let humanity see the attack once, rewrite the response, and win, at a cost measured not in ships, but in something far stranger. Crew members began to report strange psychological symptoms after repeated exposure to rewind fields, déjà vu so intense it caused panic attacks, memories of deaths that hadn't technically happened but that lingered in nightmares anyway, a growing unease that they were, in some undefinable way, not quite the same people who had woken up that morning. Tomasz Baran was the first to notice something worse. During the Battle of Halcyon Reach, the Hourglass core was activated for the 4th time, against Liu's explicit warning. The battle was desperate. Okafor had no choice. The rewind worked. The fleet survived. But when the 4 minutes resolved, Tomasz found a body in the cargo hold. His own. It lay crumpled near the core's housing, wearing his uniform, bearing his face, dead, apparently, for exactly 4 minutes, killed by a burst of radiation from an unstable feedback loop in a version of events that, by every account anyone else could remember, had never occurred. Liu ordered the body sealed, studded, and the incident classified beyond even Project Hourglass's already absurd secrecy. She now understood, with cold clarity, what General Webb had refused to hear months earlier. The Hourglass core did not simply rewind time. It sometimes created a discarded version of reality, and sometimes, rarely, unpredictably, some small piece of that discarded version refused to disappear cleanly. They were not just bending time. They were leaving bodies behind in the folds. 6. The final gambit. By the 5th year of Hourglass's deployment, the war had turned decisively in humanity's favor. The Krivan Dominion, unable to explain or counter an enemy that always seemed to know their next move, began to fracture. Their hive command structure, built on rigid centralized instinct, could not adapt to an opponent who effectively cheated at causality itself. But Okafor and Liu both understood something the public, and even most of command, did not. This could not go on forever. Every use of the core deepened the fractures in the timeline around it. The bodies, quiet, classified, growing in number, were proof that reality itself was straining under humanity's borrowed miracle. The final battle came at the gates of the Krivan homeworld itself, a system called Threshold by human cartographers. Here, the Dominion had massed everything it had left, the entirety of its remaining war hive fleet, over 30,000 vessels, in a last desperate stand. Okafor knew one rewind would not be enough. She would need two, back-to-back, an act Liu had warned might tear the bubble apart entirely. If we do this, Liu told her privately, we might not come back the same. Any of us. If we don't, Okafor replied, there won't be a we left to come back at all. The hourglass core activated for what would be its final time. The first 4 minutes were fought and lost, the human vanguard obliterated, Okafor's own flagship crippled. Then, rewind. The fleet fought again, informed, precise, merciless, and this time broke the Kriven line, driving deep into the heart of their formation. Then, against every protocol, against Liu's screamed objections over the comm, Okafor called for a second rewind before the field had even fully stabilized. What happened in that second fold of time has never been fully reconstructed. Ships that should have been destroyed were found intact but crewed by people who insisted, with complete sincerity and matching memories, that they had lived through the entire battle twice, differently each time. Some vessels reported crew members who did not appear on any manifest, quiet strangers who helped fight the battle and then, when the dust settled, simply were not there anymore, as though they had been borrowed from a version of the war that no longer needed to exist. The Kriven Dominion's fleet was shattered. Their homeworld sued for terms within the week. The Galactic War, 45 years old, ended in humanity's favor. A victory built on 4 minutes, folded and refolded until the seams began to show. 7. What was left behind? Dr. Wen Liu ordered the hourglass core dismantled the day the armistice was signed. She oversaw its destruction personally, scattering the shielded components across a dozen classified facilities, ensuring no one, not even Earth's own government, would ever be able to reassemble it. Admiral Okafor retired quietly, declining every honor offered to her. In the years that followed, she rarely spoke of threshold, and when she did, she never described it as a victory. She called it the war we won by cheating people out of dying, and only some of them noticed the bill came due. Tomasz Baran's death, and the strange, unexplained death of at least 11 other crew members across the war's final years, each one a duplicate of someone who was, by all other accounts, still alive and well, remained the war's most closely guarded secret. Historians would later credit revolutionary predictive technology for humanity's improbable comeback, a story convenient enough that no one questioned it too closely. Only a handful of people ever knew the truth, that humanity had won the Galactic War not with a better weapon, but by breaking one of the universe's oldest rules, and that somewhere in the folded, discarded seconds of 100 rewritten battles, small pieces of reality, and the people who briefly lived in them, had been left behind, floating in the seams of a history that no longer had room for them. Dr. Liu kept a single memento from Project Hourglass until the day she died, a small dented nameplate reading T. Baran, salvaged from a body that, according to every official record, had never existed at all. She never explained it to anyone. She didn't need to. She was the only one left who remembered both versions of the story, the one where he lived, and the one where the war was won. End.